The morning sun painted golden streaks across the ancient stones of Westminster Abbey as Lady Catherine Pemberton stood before the towering mirror in her private chambers. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the delicate lace of her wedding gown, a masterpiece that had taken the finest seamstresses in England 6 months to complete. Today, she would marry King Edward VII, becoming the first commoner in 3 centuries to join the royal family through marriage. Catherine's journey to this moment had been nothing short of extraordinary. Born to a modest merchant family in the countryside of Yorkshire, she had caught the king's attention during a charity event in London 2 years earlier. Her natural grace, sharp intellect, and genuine compassion for the less fortunate had captivated the young monarch, who had ascended to the throne just 3 years prior after his father's unexpected passing. The royal wedding had sparked intense debate across the kingdom. Traditional nobles whispered disapprovingly in palace corridors, questioning whether a woman of common birth could truly understand the weight of royal duty. The press had been relentless in their scrutiny, dissecting every aspect of Catherine's background and character. Yet the common people had embraced her with overwhelming enthusiasm, seeing in her a symbol of hope and change in a monarchy that had long seemed distant and unapproachable. As Catherine's lady-in-waiting carefully arranged the cathedral-length train of her ivory silk gown, memories of her first meeting with Edward flooded her mind. She had been serving soup to homeless families at a shelter in East London when the king, traveling incognito to better understand his subjects' struggles, had approached her table. Their conversation about social reform and the responsibility of privilege had lasted hours, igniting a connection that neither had expected. The king himself was preparing in his private quarters across the palace. Edward, at 28, carried himself with the quiet confidence that came from his royal upbringing, yet his heart raced with nervous excitement. Unlike previous royal marriages arranged for political alliances, this union was born of genuine love and mutual respect. He had defied his advisors, parliament members, and even his own mother, the Queen Dowager, to marry the woman who had captured not only his heart, but also his vision for a more progressive monarchy. Outside Westminster Abbey, thousands of well-wishers had gathered since before dawn, creating a sea of British flags and handmade signs expressing support for the unlikely couple. Street vendors sold commemorative items while children clutched small Union Jacks, their faces painted with crowns and hearts. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as carriages began arriving, carrying dignitaries from across Europe and the Commonwealth. Inside the Abbey, the Archbishop of Canterbury made final preparations for the ceremony. The ancient building, which had witnessed the coronations of monarchs for nearly 1,000 years, would today host a wedding that many believed would reshape the future of the British monarchy. Flowers adorned every pillar and pew, their fragrance mixing with the scent of centuries-old stone and wood. Catherine's family had arrived from Yorkshire the previous week, overwhelmed by the grandeur surrounding them but proud beyond measure. Her father, Thomas Pemberton, a successful but humble textile merchant, had initially worried about his daughter's ability to navigate the complex world of royal protocol. Her mother, Margaret, had spent countless hours learning proper etiquette from palace staff, determined not to embarrass her daughter on the most important day of her life. The guest list read like a who's who of European royalty and British society. Foreign monarchs, prime ministers, celebrities, and charity leaders filled the Abbey's ornate pews. Notable was the presence of several representatives from Catherine's charitable organizations, a deliberate choice by the couple to honor her commitment to social causes. As the morning progressed, tension mounted in both camps. Royal security had been increased threefold, following intelligence reports of potential protests by Republican groups opposed to the monarchy. Police cordoned off streets for miles around Westminster, creating a security perimeter that would protect the ceremony while allowing the public to participate in the celebration. Catherine's final preparations included a private moment with her grandmother's pearl necklace, a simple piece that seemed modest compared to the elaborate royal jewels she would soon inherit. This personal touch represented her determination to remain connected to her roots despite her elevated status. The king had insisted she incorporate personal elements into the ceremony, understanding that authenticity would be crucial to public acceptance of their union. Meanwhile, Edward reviewed his vows one final time. Unlike the traditional royal wedding scripts, he had written personal promises to Catherine, words that spoke of partnership, love, and their shared commitment to serving the British people. His private secretary had advised against such personal touches, but Edward believed this wedding should mark a new chapter for the monarchy, one characterized by transparency and genuine connection with subjects. The Abbey's bells began their ceremonial toll, signaling the approach of the historic moment. Television crews from around the world positioned their cameras to capture every detail for the estimated 2 billion viewers expected to watch the ceremony. This would be the most watched royal wedding in history, surpassing even his parents' ceremony decades earlier. In her final moments as a commoner, Catherine reflected on the path that had brought her to this extraordinary point. From helping her father with bookkeeping in their small shop to preparing to become queen consort, her journey seemed almost surreal. Yet she felt ready for the challenges ahead, strengthened by Edward's unwavering support and her own deep commitment to using her position for positive change. The king's ceremonial carriage arrived at Westminster Abbey precisely at 11 o'clock, as protocol demanded. Edward stepped out, resplendent in his military dress uniform adorned with medals and ceremonial decorations passed down through generations of monarchs. The crowd's cheers echoed off the surrounding buildings as he acknowledged their enthusiasm with a confident wave before disappearing into the Abbey's ancient doors. Catherine's departure from Buckingham Palace marked the beginning of the final chapter of her transformation, from common citizen to royal bride. Her carriage, a glass coach that had carried royal brides for over 2 centuries, moved slowly through streets lined with cheering crowds. Inside, she maintained the composed smile she had practiced for months, though her heart pounded with excitement and nervous energy. The procession route to Westminster Abbey had been carefully planned to maximize public participation while ensuring security. Police officers on horseback accompanied the carriage, their ceremonial uniforms adding to the pageantry of the occasion. Military bands positioned along the route played traditional British melodies, their music mixing with the cheers and applause of the gathered crowds. As Westminster Abbey came into view, Catherine took a deep breath, preparing herself for the moment that would change her life forever. The ancient building stood majestically against the London sky, its Gothic spires reaching heavenward as if blessing the union about to take place within its sacred walls. Soon, she would walk down that famous aisle, past centuries of history, to meet the man she loved and begin their shared journey as partners in both marriage and service to the nation. The massive doors of Westminster Abbey opened with ceremonial precision as Catherine's carriage came to a gentle stop. A red carpet stretched from the carriage steps to the Abbey's entrance, flanked by members of the household cavalry in their brilliant dress uniforms. Their sabers caught the morning sunlight as they stood at attention, creating a corridor of honor for the bride's entrance. Catherine's bridesmaids, carefully selected to represent both royal tradition and her personal connections, emerged first from the accompanying carriage. Among them were her younger sister Sarah, 2 of Edward's cousins, and remarkably, 3 young women from the charitable organizations where Catherine had volunteered. This mixing of social classes in the wedding party had generated considerable discussion among royal watchers. But Edward and Catherine had insisted on including people who truly mattered to them. The bride's entrance into Westminster Abbey created a moment of absolute silence, followed by a collective intake of breath from the nearly 2,000 guests. Catherine moved with natural grace down the ancient aisle, her train flowing behind her like liquid silk. The Abbey's soaring arches seemed to frame her perfectly, while centuries of royal history looked down from stained glass windows and stone monuments. Edward waited at the altar, his expression a mixture of love, pride, and barely contained emotion. As Catherine approached, their eyes met, and for a moment, the weight of royal protocol and public scrutiny seemed to disappear. Here were simply two people deeply in love, about to make promises that would bind them together for life. The Archbishop of Canterbury began the ceremony with words that acknowledged both the sacred nature of marriage and the unique responsibilities of royal union. His voice echoed through the Abbey's magnificent acoustics, reaching every corner of the building and, through television broadcasts, millions of homes around the world. The traditional Anglican wedding service proceeded with careful attention to both religious significance and royal protocol. However, Edward and Catherine had negotiated several personal touches that made the ceremony uniquely theirs. Instead of the usual promise to obey, Catherine pledged to love, honor, and support Edward, a modern adjustment that reflected their partnership approach to royal duties. When the moment came for the exchange of rings, Edward placed on Catherine's finger a sapphire and diamond band that had belonged to his beloved grandmother. Catherine, in turn, gave Edward a simple gold band, inside which she had engraved the words, "My king, my love," in elegant script. This personal touch moved Edward visibly, causing a slight tremor in his voice as he spoke his vows. The musical selections for the ceremony had been chosen to represent both Catherine's Yorkshire heritage and royal tradition. A children's choir from her hometown performed a beautiful rendition of Jerusalem, while the world-renowned Abbey choir sang traditional hymns that had graced royal weddings for centuries. The combination created a bridge between Catherine's past and future, symbolizing the unity their marriage represented. Among the distinguished guests, foreign royalty sat alongside Catherine's childhood friends from Yorkshire. The King of Sweden chatted amiably with Catherine's former schoolteacher, while the Prime Minister found himself seated next to the local vicar from Catherine's home parish. This deliberate mixing of social circles represented the couple's desire to break down traditional barriers. The most moving moment of the ceremony came during Edward's personal vows. Speaking directly to Catherine, he promised not only to love and cherish her, but to support her charitable endeavors and ensure that her voice would be heard in royal decision-making. His words represented a radical departure from traditional royal marriages, where wives were expected to remain largely in the background. Catherine's response was equally powerful and personal. She spoke of her love for Edward the man, separate from his royal title, and her commitment to serving the British people alongside him. Her voice remained steady and clear, demonstrating the confidence that had first attracted Edward and convinced him she could handle the pressures of royal life. The signing of the marriage register took place in the Abbey's historic Jerusalem chamber, witnessed by family members and close friends. Catherine's signature, neat and precise, appeared below Edward's bold flourish, making their union legally binding. The document would join centuries of royal marriage records in the Abbey's archives. Meanwhile, outside the Abbey, the crowds had grown even larger as people arrived from across Britain and beyond to witness this historic moment. Giant television screens had been erected in nearby Parliament Square, allowing thousands more to watch the ceremony live. The atmosphere remained festive and supportive, with occasional choruses of "God Save the King" breaking out spontaneously. As the ceremony neared its conclusion, the Archbishop pronounced Edward and Catherine husband and wife. The moment Edward kissed his new bride, the Abbey's bells began their triumphant peal, joined by church bells across London and throughout the Commonwealth. The sound created a symphony of celebration that could be heard for miles. The newlyweds processed back down the aisle as king and queen consort, their faces radiant with joy and relief. The congregation rose in a show of respect and celebration, many dabbing at their eyes with handkerchiefs. Even the most traditional nobles seemed moved by the obvious love between the couple. Catherine's transformation was now complete, but perhaps more remarkable was how naturally she carried herself. Gone was any trace of nervousness or uncertainty. In its place was the confident bearing of a woman who had found her place and purpose. The crown jewels she now wore seemed to belong on her, as if she had been born to this role. The wedding party gathered outside Westminster Abbey for the traditional photographs. Catherine's family stood proudly beside their new royal relatives, no longer overwhelmed but genuinely welcomed into the fold. Edward's younger brother, Prince William, had been particularly kind to Catherine's parents, understanding their adjustment to royal life. The famous balcony appearance at Buckingham Palace awaited, where the newlyweds would make their first public appearance as a married couple. Tradition dictated a formal wave and perhaps a brief kiss for the crowds below. However, Edward and Catherine had already shown their willingness to blend tradition with personal authenticity. The carriage ride back to Buckingham Palace through the streets of London provided an opportunity for the couple to thank the thousands who had gathered to celebrate with them. Catherine waved with natural warmth, while Edward acknowledged the crowd with the practiced ease of his royal upbringing. Together, they presented an image of a modern monarchy that remained connected to its people. Street parties had spontaneously erupted throughout London and across Britain. Pubs served free drinks in honor of the royal wedding, while communities organized outdoor celebrations, complete with bunting and traditional British fare. The wedding had provided a moment of national unity and celebration that transcended political and social divisions. Television commentators worldwide praised the ceremony's blend of ancient tradition and contemporary relevance. Many noted how Catherine's inclusion of her charitable work colleagues in the wedding party sent a powerful message about the monarchy's commitment to social causes. Fashion experts declared her dress a masterpiece that would influence wedding design for years to come. As their carriage approached Buckingham Palace, Edward took Catherine's hand and squeezed it gently. They had successfully navigated the public ceremony, but the real test of their union would come in the years ahead as they worked together to modernize the monarchy while respecting its traditions. For now, though, they could simply enjoy the moment and the overwhelming support of the British people. The golden gates of Buckingham Palace swung open to welcome the newly married couple home. As their carriage rolled through the courtyard, palace staff lined the route, applauding and throwing rose petals in a spontaneous display of affection rarely seen in the usually formal royal household. Catherine's genuine smile and Edward's obvious happiness had won over even the most skeptical servants. Inside the palace, preparations for the wedding breakfast were in their final stages. The state dining room had been transformed into a wonderland of white roses, crystal, and gold. Unlike previous royal wedding receptions that featured hundreds of guests, Edward and Catherine had chosen a more intimate celebration with only their closest family and friends, creating an atmosphere more like a beloved family gathering than a formal state occasion. The famous balcony appearance drew closer, and palace officials briefed the couple on protocol. However, when the moment arrived and they stepped onto the central balcony overlooking the Mall, something magical happened. The enormous crowd below erupted in cheers so thunderous that it seemed to shake the very foundations of the palace. Catherine and Edward exchanged a look of amazement at the outpouring of genuine affection. Their kiss on the balcony lasted longer than royal protocol typically allowed. But the crowd's enthusiastic response suggested they approved of this breach of tradition. When they waved together, Catherine's natural warmth complemented Edward's more formal training perfectly. 3 separate appearances were required before the crowd began to disperse. Each one met with renewed cheers and applause. The wedding breakfast proved to be a delightful blend of royal tradition and personal touches that reflected the couple's unique relationship. Catherine's father gave a heartfelt speech about watching his daughter grow from a determined little girl in Yorkshire into a confident woman ready to serve her adopted country. His words brought tears to many eyes, including those of the usually stoic Queen Dowager. Edward's speech surprised everyone with its humor and heartfelt emotion. He spoke about falling in love not just with Catherine's beauty, but with her passionate commitment to helping others and her ability to see the best in every person she met. He credited her with teaching him to be a better king by showing him how to connect genuinely with his subjects rather than simply performing royal duties. The wedding cake, a 5-tier masterpiece created by Britain's most celebrated pastry chef, incorporated flavors meaningful to the couple's relationship. The bottom layer featured Yorkshire Parkin, honoring Catherine's heritage, while upper layers included traditional fruitcake and modern flavors like lemon and elderflower. The couple's decision to save the top tier following royal tradition symbolized their confidence in their future together. Catherine's transformation throughout the day had been remarkable to witness. From the nervous young woman in the morning to the confident queen consort by evening, she had grown into her new role with grace and authenticity. Her interactions with foreign dignitaries at the reception demonstrated the diplomatic skills that would serve Britain well in years to come. The evening reception brought a different energy as younger guests joined the celebration. Catherine's university friends mingled with European royalty, creating conversations that bridged social divides in unprecedented ways. The dance floor saw traditional waltzes alongside contemporary music, reflecting the couple's desire to honor the past while embracing the future. Edward and Catherine's first dance was to a song they had chosen together, a modern ballad about enduring love that spoke to their genuine relationship rather than their arranged royal status. As they moved together on the dance floor, their obvious affection and natural partnership were evident to all who watched. The moment felt both intimate and historic. The gifts received by the couple ranged from priceless artifacts from world leaders to handmade items from ordinary citizens. Catherine was particularly moved by a quilt created by residents of a care home she had visited regularly before her engagement. The elderly residents had each contributed a square embroidered with good wishes for the couple's future. International media coverage of the wedding had been overwhelmingly positive, with commentators praising the ceremony's perfect balance of pageantry and genuine emotion. Fashion magazines worldwide featured Catherine's dress, predicting it would influence bridal fashion for generations. More importantly, political analysts noted how the wedding had strengthened Britain's soft power and international relationships. As evening approached, the newlyweds prepared for their departure to their honeymoon destination. Unlike previous royal honeymoons on luxury yachts or exotic royal estates, Edward and Catherine had chosen to spend their first days as a married couple at a private cottage in the Scottish Highlands, reflecting their preference for authenticity over ostentation. The couple's final public appearance of the day came as they departed Buckingham Palace in an open-top carriage decorated with flowers. The route through London allowed thousands more well-wishers to see them one last time. Catherine wore a powder blue going-away outfit that had been designed by a young British designer, supporting emerging talent rather than established fashion houses. The evening news broadcasts across Britain and the Commonwealth featured extensive coverage of the day's events, with commentators unanimously declaring the wedding a resounding success. Public opinion polls showed overwhelming support for the new queen consort, with many expressing optimism about the monarchy's future direction under the couple's leadership. Street celebrations continued well into the night across Britain and the Commonwealth countries, from London's East End to remote villages in Scotland, from Canadian cities to Australian towns. People gathered to raise toasts to the couple's happiness and to celebrate what many saw as the dawn of a new era for the monarchy. The palace released a brief statement thanking the public for their overwhelming support and generosity. Edward and Catherine expressed their gratitude for the warmth shown by people from all walks of life and their excitement about beginning their married life together in service to the nation and Commonwealth. Catherine's parents, exhausted but elated, returned to their Yorkshire home as local celebrities. Their neighbors had organized a welcome party, complete with bunting and a brass band, to celebrate their daughter's remarkable journey from local girl to queen consort. The community's pride was evident in every banner and speech. Media analysis in the following days would declare the royal wedding a masterpiece of modern monarchy. Commentators noted how Edward and Catherine had successfully honored tradition while making the ceremony personally meaningful and publicly accessible. The wedding had demonstrated that the monarchy could evolve while maintaining its essential dignity and purpose. The morning after the wedding found Britain buzzing with positive energy and renewed affection for the royal family. Social media overflowed with congratulations and expressions of support for the couple. The wedding had achieved something remarkable in modern politics, uniting people across social, economic, and political divides in genuine celebration. As Edward and Catherine began their honeymoon in the peaceful Scottish countryside, they could reflect on a day that had exceeded every expectation. They had not only married the person they loved, but had successfully launched a new chapter for the British monarchy. Their wedding would be remembered not just as a beautiful ceremony, but as the moment when the crown truly reconnected with the people it served. The future stretched before them, full of challenges and opportunities. Together, they would face the complexities of modern royal life while maintaining the love and partnership that had brought them to this historic moment. Their wedding day had proven that authentic emotion and genuine connection could coexist perfectly with royal tradition and constitutional duty. The King's royal wedding ceremony at Westminster Abbey had concluded, but the real story of King Edward VII and Queen Consort Catherine was just beginning.